everybody, and welcome to this mid-season review of Ted Lasso Season 3 here on the Outlaw Nation. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by my wingman on the field himself, Lord Shannon McClung. Shannon, how are you? How are you feeling? How are things, man?
Johnny, I'm doing just fine. I was able to wake up early this morning and watch The Mandalorian again for our chat after this. And I, watched Ted Lasso before we went to bed last night. So I have third season series in the brain right now.
Yeah, we're going to have a fun review here, about 30, 35 minutes, talking about Season 3, our overall thoughts on Season 3 and what we think, how I think this season is going. So just to let you all know, and before we start, remind you all to please subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. So I believe, as you see behind me, that I can get there. So help me get there by the end of the year. Help us all get there because we're all part of the Outlaw Nation channel. We would appreciate it madly. All right, let's jump into it, Shannon. So much going on in the world of AFC Richmond and what they're dealing with here. We've got Roy and Jamie Tartt developing a bromance. We've got Rebecca with this idea that she might be getting pregnant here when she felt like there had been no possibility. We have Ted questioning himself whether he belongs here in this club anymore, and if being here has led to the dissolution of his marriage and dealing with the fact that she is moving on with the guy who was supposed to be counseling them, which does happen. I've heard this story many times, and dealing with his son becoming a little bit of a bully. How does that go about as well? And then, of course, we're dealing with Keely and her friend and hiring her to work on her staff. And we had this wonderful season 6 episode set in Amsterdam, written by our friend Brett Goldstein there, who writes on the show and is, of course, Coach Beard on the show. A lot of stuff explored here. So what are your overall thoughts here as we hit this halfway point of season 3?
Up until last night, it was fine. You could kind of see where the season's going, that ultimately Ted maybe is going to realize that the best thing for him and his mental health is maybe to quit and to go home and to be with his son. Right. Higgins even threw it out there to Rebecca that, like, hey, we might need a change in manager.
Yes.
And
earlier in the season,
the whole idea, I want to say Jan Moss said it at the first or second episode.
Because of course Jan Moss said it. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
But most clubs, and you'll be able to speak to this better, most clubs who get promoted get relegated the next season because you're suddenly you're playing in a different league. You're playing with more competitive squads. Yeah. So the idea that Ted and Nate and Beard all did was great, but it might not be enough to play at this next level. Right. So for the most of the scene, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Like it's funny. It's like throwing on like a warm, familiar jacket.
Yes.
This last episode, Sunflowers, which clocked in at over an hour.
Dude. Yeah.
Was delightful. Like this is to me, this is the Ted Lasso of season 1. This is just, you have all of these different storylines and everything's going great. I love the burgeoning bromance between Roy and Jamie. The two of them playing off each other is just really, really fun. I loved the team trying to figure out what it is that they're going to do. Yeah. I thought it was just, again, I thought it was delightful. Ted's whole thing going to like the American themed restaurant and the Tower of Onion Rings and seeing that whatever, like looking at like, the footage from the old Bulls championship, how that has sort of reignited his competitive spirit. Right. It's kind of, it's greased the wheels a little bit. And so even though, Beard shows up at the end dressed up like Piggy Stardust, and basically saying like, yes, this is a thing that he's like, you came up with this? He's like, okay, because, they came up with this in Holland, however many years ago.
Total football.
Maybe it's something we should try. And I loved, so the whole idea that Rebecca goes to that fortune teller, that psychic, and she says, you're going to be a mom. She finds out she can't get pregnant. My wife and I immediately go, oh God, Sassy's going to die. And Rebecca's going to have to raise her daughter. But then it's like, well,
I didn't think
she
about that.
the daughter hasn't been around. Like,
Yeah. We
and
haven't
showed
spent too much
up.
time with her.
I don't think they would have introduced that storyline unless the daughter had been somewhat of a presence. But now seeing that Rebecca shows up on this, Dutch riverman's boat,
Yeah.
and seeing that he clearly has a child, like has a daughter, it looks like. It's
Right.
like, oh my gosh, so she's gonna go live on the river with
I
this
mean,
dude who she didn't get
possibly.
a name.
Yeah. Possibly, because she said, "Did we do anything last night?" He tells her, "No, we didn't." And then when he's by himself after she walks out, he says, "Yes, we did." So he may have impregnated her. This may be the storyline
Oh,
they're
you
going to
think
explore.
it was that? You think they had sex?
Oh yes, 100%. And I
Oh,
think
I don't
okay,
think that.
we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, one of us is going to be right on this one, because I thought that he had sex with her, because he said, "Yes, we did," and he could have just meant the foot massage or taking care of her. But maybe at some point in the night they did have sex, and because the person said that she was going to get pregnant, which she was mad about, the what do you call it, fortune teller,
The
um,
psychic, yeah.
the psychic, sure, yeah, said she was going to get pregnant, and so I think he's impregnated her, and it's going to be her being a single mom and dealing with that and raising her child. And that's going to be, this show has never been afraid to deal with these kind of taboo subjects. And certainly with Colin's exploration of his homosexuality and dealing with that as a player here in this season, which really got highlighted also in this episode. I think the idea of having a child out of wedlock, navigating that as a powerful businesswoman, what that whole thing would look like, would be an interesting thing going into. I know they said it's done season 3, but there's been talk about a season 4 possibly. So who knows? But you might be right. She might be just falling in love with this guy and then becoming a stepmom to this young girl. That's possible too, for sure.
Well, yeah, I didn't get that because she did not specify. Like, and I don't remember the exact phrasing that she used. Basically, did we do anything? She said she didn't say did we sleep together. She said did we do anything?
Right.
And I think she was referencing sex, and so he said
Yeah.
no, we didn't have sex. But then when he said yes, we did, I think it's did we fall in love?
Oh,
Like
interesting. Okay.
that's what that's my own personal headcanon. That's what I took from it.
No, Shannon McClung,
And also
romantic. I respect that.
but also the Trent Crimm storyline. I thought that was delightful because it's definitely was teed up to be, oh, he's gonna rat this guy out.
Right.
And nothing we've seen from the players on Richmond, we haven't seen any behavior, especially since the end of season 1, that would lead us to believe that they would criticize anyone for being gay. But it's a big thing, for folks when you have to, when you reveal this about yourself, like, hey, here's this thing. And so the fact that Trent is also gay and is also not something that he apparently widely shares. Watching them bond, I thought was just a lovely storyline.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. They did a nice job of laying the groundwork for that for Colin and kind of exploring that and hiding it. And look, that's the truth. I mean, in professional sports, it's still a very, very, very rare thing where a person in their prime starting on a team comes out as gay. There was Michael, I think it was Michael Sam a few years ago, who came out as gay before the NFL draft. And he was selected eventually, but a lot of people felt that he had fallen down on the draft board because of the fact that he had come out. And the NFL teams are very legendary for, quote unquote, not wanting distractions. Never mind that they chase down mercurial wide receivers all the time to bring onto their teams, but they claimed that would be a distraction. And we see that in football, soccer, whatever you want to say, especially because there's a lot of the manhood stuff, which you wouldn't think, considering, all the flopping that you see sometimes in games. There's a lot of that old school masculine shit that goes into football. So there are not a lot of players, hockey too, not a lot of players that come out gay. Basketball, there have been a couple in the NBA. So it's not a widely known thing, yet statistically, that there are a number of gay players on the male side of things. Certainly on the female side of things, it's very accepted. It's not a big deal, but on the male side of things, it still has that old school taboo. So I like that we got that with Colin, and I really enjoyed the conversation they had where he's like, I don't want to be some kind of role model, or I don't want to be the the stand. I just want to be able to live my life like everybody else lives their life. I want to kiss my boyfriend or husband after a match like the guys do. I want to be able to just have a life. I don't want to stand for something. And there are plenty of people in the gay community who feel that way as well. If they were to come out, they don't want to draw attention to themselves. They just want it to be accepted and commonplace so we can all just move on. So I really appreciated that as well. And I mean, Trent Crimm, man, what an MVP he's becoming as a almost series regular on this show, don't you think?
Yeah, especially juxtaposing his introduction in season one, how he's this sort of razor sharp journalist. And even the episode, it was probably episode 2 or 3, where he and Ted go to that local restaurant and they just crank up the spice and you see them both slowly dying. And we hear the voiceover of him basically saying, Ted Lasso seems like a good man. And Ted Lasso is going to get chewed up and spit out. And so, it's just been such an interesting evolution of that character. And this sort of gives him one more layer of why we actually do like Trent Crimm.
And James Lance doing a wonderful job acting as the Trent Crimm. And hey, look, they took him to the White House, so clearly they have a lot of affection for Trent Crimm on the show for sure. Let's swing back to Ted here, because this has been it is called Ted Lasso, so we've seen him navigating some tough things this season. Certainly his panic attacks coming back, dealing with the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that the doctor who was supposed to be counseling them in their dissolution or possible reunification of their marriage is the person who is now dating Ted's wife, and Ted finding that out through his son. And of course, we saw him and his son begin the season in that episode in the airport. And then, of course, his son getting involved in a little bit of a bullying situation. So Ted having to navigate all of this. And then we had this winning streak with Zava, and then Zava leaves, and now we're in this real funk. And Ted goes on this spiritual journey, almost like peyote spiritual journey here in Flowers, and discovers total football, which is, of course, what Brett said so well there as Coach Beard. It is a concept that has been around since the 1970s with the great Orange Machine there from the Dutch. So your thoughts on the Ted Lasso journey and how Sudeikis has done this season?
I mean, he's been doing a great job. I mean, Sudeikis, prior to this series, I did not think much of Sudeikis's acting talent. And that's not to say that he's not funny, because on SNL he's very, very funny. I thought he was funny enough in Horrible Bosses. I thought he was definitely third place behind, Jason Bateman and Charlie Day. But I'm like, yeah, he's a decent leading man. With this, like, he definitely unlocked that vulnerability. And he just made this character that I think on the surface would be very, very easy to dismiss as kind of like, oh, this is ridiculous. But then you start to kind of fall in love with his aw shucksness. And now, after his work with Dr. Sharon in season 2, we see someone who's really, really kind of at a mental health crossroads, in that this is not something that he has grown up wanting to talk about. But we see just how, again, vulnerable he actually is. And, the opening of this season, when he's at the airport, it's just a look of utter heartbreak on his face. I mean, and, I think as an audience, who've been on the train since season 1, like, your heart just kind of goes out for him right now, because you see that aw shucksness, that somewhat irritating positivity. It is a bit of a mask, because he doesn't want the real Ted to get out there. One, because that's not something he necessarily wants to share with anybody, but also it's sort of like, what good is this going to do? Like, I don't want to bother other people with my problems. And I think that's something that a lot of folks who struggle with their mental health, that is something that's a recurring theme, is I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to be a burden. And watching him put the mask on for Henry's sake, and having to, say goodbye to his child. I mean, it was really, really heartbreaking. And watching him take the high road with everything regarding Nate is great. And then watching again with the most recent episode with Sunflowers, watching that side of his brain get re-engaged, and you start to see maybe this is what he fell in love with at the beginning with football, with American football. Like, this is the thing that he actually, this is something I'm good at. And even though, like, we've joked about for 2.5 seasons, he doesn't really know that much about European football, but what gets his players going is his positivity. Now we see, wait a minute, maybe the really good American football coach, maybe we're finally going to get to see what he can do now that he's he's cracked the code.
Yeah. It's really interesting because this season of the Premier League in real life has been highlighted. One of the storylines has been Jesse Marsch, who was a American football coach who had been coaching in Germany, who got hired by Leeds United, then was let go because they didn't like where Leeds United was going. The owners did. And he has flirted with going on to 2 or 3 other teams. And right at the last minute, the talks have fallen through. And so he has been an American coach that people have been talking about. And a lot of people called him the Ted Lasso of the Premier League this season. So very interesting stuff, because he himself has unusual coaching tactics, unusual coaching approach, very emotional, very much caring, wears the sweater. So there's a lot here that's comparable, which I think has been great to kind of watch in real life while you're watching Ted Lasso. And yeah, I really enjoyed Jason's performance throughout. And of course, we'd be remiss not to mention his actual real life stuff with Olivia Wilde, his own kids. You can't help but think that is bleeding through into some of those moments and some of those performances and some of those situations there. Some actual kind of blurring of the lines between reality and fiction in his performances. And I've really enjoyed him this season. And I did love this last episode where he went on this kind of peyote trip and figured out how to get the best out of the team, because they've been in this slump. And like you said, he's still learning things. We learned at the beginning of this episode, he didn't know that these exhibition matches are called friendlies. And so the whole thing of him still learning European football still 3 seasons in is really interesting. But I've enjoyed the journey of, and like you talked about, the mental health stuff, and that they've not been afraid to deal with that in this show. And I've really appreciated that, and seeing Jason kind of embody that in those moments. For someone like me who has had panic attacks and has suffered with mental health, I connect to a lot of what he is dealing with and negotiating and navigating. And you're right, people are always like, if they just reach out, and people don't understand, it's like moving concrete to try to reach out to people when you're in one of those states. People who've never experienced it can't really know what it's like and reaching out seems like I don't know, scaling the Grand Canyon. It really does feel like that when you're in those places. And I like that we highlighted this, as you were saying here in the show. Let's move on to something a little bit lighter in terms of the storylines here. Let's deal with Keely here and her friend Shandy. Never hire your friends, and also the situation. I mean, they'll end up having baby goats droppings in your conference room. But the stuff with Jack as well, seeing her embark on a new romance, the end of the relationship with her and Roy. Oh, and that was something they navigated in the first couple of episodes. They flirted with the possibility that she might get back together with Jamie. And then we have Jack, the woman who has funded her agency here, coming in, and her starting this relationship with her at the same time as she was trying to help a friend of hers maybe kind of explore the possibility of what could be out there for her, other than being what looked like to be a glorified club kid. There was all, because she had kind of climbed out of that. She thought she could help a friend climb out of that. And we saw like the real, I don't know, swings in emotion from Shandy and what she was doing here. So what do you think about this whole stuff with Keely throughout this first half of the season?
You know, I think at the beginning we just wanted Roy and Keely to get back together.
Yeah.
That we just want to see them happy, and how it looked like Keely. It really speaks to their approaches to relationships, and that Roy is very black and white, like we're doing it or we're not doing it. Whereas I think Keely, traverses in those shades of gray, like, well, this is what we want to do. This is where we are. How can we work this out? And that's just not the way that Roy Kent processes things.
Yeah.
And you add the fact that Keely is now the head of her own organization, her own company, and the challenges in terms of time and energy that requires.
Yeah.
To Roy, it just seems like they just can't do it. And we watch how much Jamie Tartt has progressed as a person, and you start to see like, oh, maybe they would be a better fit. Roy might actually kill him, but maybe they would be a better fit. And the whole thing with Shandy, I thought was so funny because Keely really struggling. I can't remember the character's name right off the top of my head, but struggling with her CFO about you can do this, you can't do
Barbara,
this.
Yeah.
And Keely basically like, well, I am the boss. And watch how Shandy just keeps fumbling the ball. And then the introduction of Jack, played by Jodie Balfour, who's from For All Mankind, which is a show that I discovered within the last year with the prodding of Michael Vogel, where she's excellent. And you see that these two have a connection.
Yes.
The way that you could see that Keely and Roy had a connection. Now, I don't think it was ever really discussed beforehand whether Keely is bisexual or this is something she's sort of exploring for the first time. But thus far, it seems like maybe they would be a good match. Ultimately, I don't think that's I don't think that's how it is going to shake out. Again, based off of this last episode, as Roy watches Keely leave and Rebecca says she's going to go hang out with someone that thinks they deserve her. And so, watching that happen, I mean, Juno Temple's just done such a great job this season, especially, at the beginning when it looks like she's just hanging by a thread and she tells Rebecca, I have to schedule a time. I have to schedule a time to cry because it's just too much.
Right.
But she's just such a bright light in a world of in a narrative world of bright lights. I mean, you have Ted Lasso, you have Danny Rojas, who it has not gotten the attention that I think it would maybe forecast that he would get. But he's still just such a Cristo Fernandez, just such a bright light, and she's another one of those just really, really bright lights that we like to see.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Look, we're two dudes talking about it, so I can only speculate it from the dude's point of view, but seeing two women of business have these moments with each other, have these honest conversations with each other, that struck me as real. And that struck me as something that maybe, the writers and the people involved in the show have had conversations with women who are, business women and trying to make it work. And where are those moments where you kind of, reveal to each other and cry in front of each other and release the valve? I love that. Was it Rebecca who said that, or was it Keely who said, like, crying is a great release. It's not a negative. It's not a weakness. It's just a release of emotion and you feel so much better afterwards. And so seeing that we're destroying those myths or trying to destroy those myths about, emotion here in these kinds of situations, I think was really good. But yeah, Juno's been fantastic this season, navigating this stuff. And she does so much in her eyes and she's giving you so much levels wise in her eyes as a performer in those moments. I mean, we think about this last episode, she's watching Roy doing that interview and she is like cheering him on silently from behind, but also hoping he doesn't say anything too bad to ruin any sponsorships. So she's navigating that in her eyes. The stuff with her and Jack on the couch was so sweet and innocent and natural the way it kind of fell into itself. And I really appreciated that. And she is intimidated by the situation, but Rebecca took a shine to her from the beginning and kind of felt that there was something more eventually with her. Why wouldn't Jack? And so we'll see if she's flying too close to the sun and her wings are going to get singed, or if this is the leveling up with Keely, that she finds a relationship that she can function and be in with another powerful woman that is of a romantic nature. So that could be really interesting. But I like that we're doing all of that. And the stuff with her and Shandy, I mean, that is just genius, smart shit. And it's true. A lot of people will tell you just because you climbed out doesn't mean you can bring a buddy up. Oh, not only a buddy, a friend, I want to say, up, because you never know how they will deal with that kind of stuff and how they'll self-implode, which is what seems to happen, because they're just not built the way you are, and there's a reason you climbed out. You know what I'm saying? And so it matters, and that's an important thing. And I like that but the performance there, I don't have the actress's name up right now, but the performance from Shandy I thought was great. She was fantastic playing that character. Oh yeah, Ambreen Razia Great stuff with her and the chemistry with her and Juno Temple. And you're right, Jodie Balfour, who I last saw as Jackie Kennedy in The Crown, because I haven't seen For All Mankind. I like her energy here. It's a much more chill energy, relaxed energy. And Keely dealing with Barbara being one of these more harder edge type people who really looks down on her, but then becomes a fawning mess when she's around Jack. You see the differences here. You know what I'm saying? And so I like that you see that the honesty of Keely is kind of breaking through all these things, and good things are happening for her because they should. Yeah, let's take a quick break, Shannon. We'll jump into some more of Ted Lasso. Oh, I don't even have a thing. Well, let's just take a quick break just for my own thing. And we'll be right back right after this.
Yeah. If I thought about it, I would have pulled up the lyrics to the song. The guy, the Mumford guy.
I think it's you get what you get. That's basically that's the things there. Let's deal with the Jamie Tartt and Roy romance here, man. This is such an bromance, rather. It's such an interesting thing that's happening in this season. We see Jamie Tartt has really come out of his shell. And of course, he was inspired by the Zava stuff, and that Zava stuff was fine. I don't think there's much we need to spend time on, but it was really a lot of fun to have that as an element of the show. Obviously, based on Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the Swedish striker there, who is an incredible guy, an incredible amount of confidence. But seeing how that motivates Jamie, and then Roy wanting a place to put his the fact that he can't do it anymore. He's kind of living vicariously through Jamie and trying to instill Jamie with the talent, with the drive and the ambition that Roy had, combined with the talent that Roy didn't have, to create this kind of better version of Roy. And we end up with them riding bicycles through Holland. What did you think of this situation here throughout the first half of the season?
I think their dynamic is fantastic. I mean, especially on the heels of season 2, where you see Jamie finally kind of standing up to his dad. Watching Roy embrace him in that moment. Like, it's just such a great relationship, because Roy is always going to be a curmudgeon. Like, that is just who that guy is. Jamie, not always a douche. Like, when he starts to see that the advantages to being a team player, and how it's actually so much less energy and so much less work to be a decent person versus being an asshole. Right. And also him getting taken down a peg because of Zava. Like, suddenly he's not the main attraction. He's not they gave Zava 4 lockers. Jamie only has 1. He gets his own corner.
Yeah.
But watching how Jamie, he does have that relationship with the rest of the team now. Like, there is a bond there. Still a little sure of himself, which when you're playing at that, if you're a professional athlete playing at that level, of course, like you need an element of that. But watching him be put on his heels because of the introduction of Zava, having to go to Roy and be like, how can you make me better? Yeah. Like, how can we do this? And we can see how Roy, even at the top of his game, as we're told, his mind could do it, but your body, you can only push to a certain point.
Yeah.
And Jamie's body can go further. And so watching Roy showing up at like 4 a.m. for training, Brett Goldstein wearing a headlamp. It's just such a funny visual. And again, the most recent episode, as Ted's basically like, no curfew. You guys go have fun. And Roy, no! Todd, follow me. And watching this jog all throughout Amsterdam, and probably outside of the city, to see a windmill, it was just awesome. And you see that Roy is not the only one teaching, that Jamie's teaching Roy how to stop and smell the literal flowers. And maybe this is something that he will be able to take into his possible reconciliation with Keely. Or maybe he just takes it out into life and is able to be still be Roy Kent, but maybe be a little bit of a happier Roy Kent. I love their scenes together, especially when you start to see the power dynamic get flipped,
Yeah.
where Roy is, yeah, you know, he's got that grunt and that, you know, little bit of a limp of an ex-athlete. It's just really, really fun to see, and they're both doing an awesome job.
I agree. Yeah, the chemistry between them has been there since the beginning as adversaries, and now slowly becoming friends. And of course, Roy's going to be a bit, you know, distant with Jamie, but you know, Jamie's breaking through, teaching him how to ride the bike. That is such a perfect montage of how Roy Kent would learn to ride a bike when he's dealing with the trauma of his grandfather's stuff at this. I mean, throwing the bike, all of that, but then eventually, let's go get a windmill, you know, and all of that. And then Jamie and the joy on his face of being able to kind of teach him stuff and wanted to show him around, you know, Holland and stuff. So what we had thought was a one-dimensional asshole character actually has more culture to him and more of a drive to him than we anticipated. And that's been great to see. And Phil Dunster has done a wonderful job of bringing that to life with Jamie Tartt and Roy Kent, oh God, all the name, Brett Goldstein, their chemistry has just been so good throughout the entire season. And you're right, this may be the Roy Kent, the experiences with Keely, the experiences with Jamie, these are the things that kind of get Roy to soften a little bit, not in a negative way, but to make him, to round him out a little bit more so that who knows where he goes in the future, which would be possibly managing his own team, which I imagine will happen because that's certainly what happens with a lot of ex-players nowadays in the Premier League. A lot of ex-players. Frank Lampard just came back to Chelsea. So there's a lot of these people who manage teams and manage their own teams that they used to play for. So who knows? Maybe Ted goes back to the States and Roy, of all people, takes over the managing duties of Richmond. I know a lot of people want to see Nate come back, but this is possible too. We got a couple of things to hit before we wrap up here, Shannon. We should definitely talk about Rebecca and her journey. What did you think about where she's going and the stuff with the fortune teller? And where do you think this is leading to with her? She's been kind of navigating. She had the back and forth with Ted where she came in the office, you know, are we ever going to win a fucking game? You know, this kind of thing where she got upset about it. And then she was trying to calm him down in that big match with West Ham. And we saw that the coaches kind of betrayed Ted by playing that video and what that led to. But we'll get to the Nate stuff to kind of wrap up the review. But what did you think? How do you think the Rebecca thing is going in the first half of the season?
I mean, Hannah Waddingham, again, just a delightful performer to watch. My prediction right now is that she's going to sell that club and she's going to go live on a river in the Netherlands.
That's down by the river. Yeah,
she's going to do her best Matt Foley. But again, like watching her play that, because we've seen her, you know, at the beginning of season 1, be a little devious, a little sinister, because her goal was to hurt her ex-husband. Like that's what she wanted. And watching how Ted was eventually able to thaw her out and bring her walls down. And then we see someone who actually does have a genuine affection for the game and for the players. Now, I mean, you see a little bit of that vindictive nature coming back. Like all she wants to do is win, especially against West Ham. That is all she wants. And it doesn't, and it didn't happen. And so, you know, watching how Keely has kind of gone off on her own journey, and Rebecca's kind of alone right now. I mean, Sassy comes in and out when she can. Rebecca doesn't really have that type of relationship with their mom that, you know, they're hanging out all the time. So it's like, what is her next adventure? And it seems like it's going to be ultimately reside in Amsterdam. That's my guess.
Yeah, you're probably right. Certainly, we flirted with the possibility of her and Sam. I remember Sassy giving her crap for earlier in the season to be like, how you gave that up? I don't understand. So clearly that's not going to open the door, or not going to have the door open again. But this may be the possibility here. Somewhere in Amsterdam may be her ultimate destination. But yeah, I mean, it's been nice to see Hannah playing these different levels in this role here as she deals with Rupert and the madness of Rupert, catching him cheating again, and then, you know, calling him out into his ear about the situation. You know, I saw you with your assistant or your secretary or whatever. So you're seeing her have the cards in a way. So yeah, we lost the match, but in a way, I kind of won because I'm not with you. Like there's a thing there that was kind of bubbling under the surface, and the fact that she was able to say it, I thought was great. So I really enjoyed Hannah, and of course, they're finding every moment to let Hannah sing because she's such a great singer. So having her sing a little bit in this previous episode was great to see as well. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where this is all going to lead to. Is she going to be this power woman who has a baby and is raising the baby with him there and her here, or are they going to get together? I don't know. So a lot of questions. Or is it going to be her taking over as a stepmom? A lot of questions to see, but I've really enjoyed the journey there. All right. And speaking of Rupert, let's deal with this to wrap up the episode here, Shannon. I will say this just right off the bat. I do think this is a criticism I have of this season, although I'm enjoying, I would say overall, the first half of season 3. I was pitched a Nate versus Roy or Nate versus Ted situation, and it's kind of not been that, except for one episode. We've seen Nate kind of deal with stuff. We've seen, of course, at the Greek restaurant, maybe the softening now when that model just kind of walks off because her friend's sick, because she doesn't like the food or whatever. And finally, the hostess warms up to Nate. But before that, we saw Nate struggling with the social media stuff. Rupert is clearly a guy who is all about appearances. And we see that Nate becomes like this docile puppy dog in front of Mannion, but outside of that, he can still be a ruthless manager of players and embarrassing them, putting them in the dumb box. But so clearly, this is a guy with a lot of stuff going on. But with her and with him and Ted, there is this possibility of a resolution, and then it just gets kind of moved away because Rupert shows up. So what do you think about how they've done this? Have they dropped the ball here, or is this just kind of a slow burn that they're going to find their way back to?
Well, we're only 6 episodes in, so I'm holding out hope because I don't think it's going to turn out to be a Ted versus Nate thing. I don't think Ted gets into that.
Right, Ted doesn't want anything to do with that. Yeah, good point.
No, like he's not going to be in any sort of battle. Like he's going to do his job, which is coach a team, and what happens on the field stays on the field.
Yeah.
I think with Nate kind of going to that darker side, going with Rupert and with West Ham, and he sees the compromising of his soul a little bit, because he is a product of, I don't know if it would be an abusive household. I mean, I don't know if his dad ever laid hands on him, but he definitely did not come from a loving household.
Right.
That he's always struggling for the approval of a parent who is never going to give it to you, and how you have to, and that can just be a fact of life. Those could just be the cards. Those are the cards Nate has been dealt.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does he proceed forward being happy enough with himself to where the approval of his father is in his rearview mirror and it doesn't matter? And so I think that's what we're seeing. I think Nate kind of being Darth Vader and Rupert's the Emperor.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Watching how Rupert operates and how Nate is drawn to the light, like he is drawn to Ted. He does feel guilt, but at the same time, as someone who's never really been showered with affection or praise or compliments, getting a laugh at Ted's expense, that only wants to make him do it more. Because what he wants is to be approved. He wants to be loved, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. Like that, like he gets that momentary gratification from the press corps. And so he keeps doing it, and he sees that Rupert's happy with it. When he actually has to confront Ted with what he has done, when he actually has to look into the face of this man who is the reason he is there, you start to see how kind of fractured he is as a person.
Right.
He sees just how there's not a whole lot to Rupert and his folks, like going to the Greek restaurant with the model, and how she's like, this is gross, it's dirty, I want to go someplace else. And of all people, Nate gets the approval of Jade, or not even really the approval, gets the sympathy of Jade, that she sits, the acceptance, and she sits down with him. So I ultimately, I think they might play each other again. If they do, I think Nate wins again.
No, they
I
do.
think Nate
They will, because you always play home and away in the Premier
Okay.
League. So they're definitely playing back at Richmond. It'll be Nate coming back. Or no, sorry, they'll be at West Ham, I guess, right? Because
I think they were at West Ham.
Okay, then they play at Richmond next. Yeah. They'll play.
But I don't think Richmond wins. I think Nate wins again because Nate is probably has the superior mind for this sport. But ultimately, he does shake Ted's hand.
Right.
That's my guess.
That's probably a good point, actually. Yeah. Ted may be the superior tactics for life, Nate having them better on the field. And so they'll find a middle ground. Yeah. I mean, Nick Mohammed having that moment in the press conference where he slaps his face and spits again and does all that stuff. Like, man, this is a guy that really needs psychological help to kind of navigate the upbringing. Sensitive kid, probably not sensitive parents, certainly the mom, but not the dad. And so he seeks for other father figures to try to get approval from him. First it was Ted, and then now it's Rupert. But, he's always dealing with his own complicated issues with that situation and his both love and revulsion at the same time for himself and for them. And so he's got to untangle that so that he can find some kind of common ground to navigate that. And we'll see in the back half of the season what happens with that. But yeah, I wish we've had more, but your point's right. We're only halfway through. Maybe there's more to come. I just felt we were pitched this thing, and I wanted to see more of that throughout. But then again, that's not really Ted Lasso, so fair. All right, there you go. Let's wrap it up there. Shannon, any final words on this first half of season 3?
I mean, if this is how they're going out, if this is the last season, I think episode 6 has been a high mark, and I hope that they only go up from there.
I agree with you. I think episode 6 is the Emmy episode. Absolutely. I think this is the one that stands out and that you will say that's the episode of the season so far. Maybe there'll be a better one coming down the road, but I don't anticipate that. But yeah, I've enjoyed this season a little more than the second season for sure. I've been enjoying this, have a lot more of coming back to the vibe of the first season, which I've really appreciated here. So looking very much forward to seeing what we're going to get in the next 6 episodes. And Shannon and I will be back to do a season finale review overall once that final episode airs on Apple TV. So we appreciate you all hanging out with us and watching or listening to our review. Remember, you can always download everything on the Outlaw Nation except for the Geek Buddies and the Hot Mic on the Outlaw Nation Podcast Network. Shannon, another fun show. Please let people know where to find you and what you got going on.
On social media, on Twitter, you can follow me right there at the bottom, at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, if you want to see my pretty face, it's at Shannon the Geek Buddy. And you can see me every week, sometimes twice a week, right now 3 times a week, with this handsome gentleman to my right, and also with Mr. Vogel on the Geek Buddies.
Thank you, brother. And as for me, you can always follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Please remember to subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that bell button. Let us know your comments as well. What did you think about the first half of the season? The stuff Shannon and I had to say. Let us know down there. Hit a like on this video as well. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode from the Outlaw Nation. Y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. Peace. Believe.